I would say fishing on Islesford is different because of the thing we have out here is camaraderie, and I know that some other harbors don't have that, and no matter what, we all stick together through the hard times and the good times, and it's just kind of like we're just a big family, and I don't see that a lot of other places these days.
I'm a third-generation lobster fisherman. I grew up, right here on the island, and all my friends, they fish, and it makes it a lot easier when we're out on the water to have your buddies, next to you when you need help.
Everybody seems to get along really well and have a good respect for one another.
I think the fishing community is quite a bit different from other communities, other islands. Everybody's growing up here together. They're all pretty much family. Most of them are related. And I think we all get along great. And we welcome newcomers. And we try to preserve the fishing for the younger generation.
And lobsters get out of the trap once they crawl in, yes. The little ones get out through the vents that we have in the traps for conservation purposes. Lets all the little ones out. And I'm sure there's ways that the bigger ones can figure a way to get out after a while.
There's also scientific studies that show that even keeper lobsters, keeper-sized lobsters, go in and out of traps all the time, which we don't really like that theory, but the fact that traps are inefficient is actually a good thing for our fishery, and it's allowed us to continue and be successful over the years, where other fisheries are too efficient. They catch everything out there, and that's not good. So it's good that they can get in and out. They're feeding stations.
Probably we catch 1 in 10 that go in.
Does a buoy point up when there's lobsters in the trap? It's usually when the tide's running, the buoys start to go under and they point up, but that's about the only time they point up.
The tension between the line and the trap is so much that the buoy points straight up. It gives you no indication of what's in a trap. How far out do I fish? I fish in the wintertime. I fish about 20 miles offshore. In the summer months, it's more like 10 to 12 miles.
Well, it depends upon the season. The lobsters tend to gravitate towards the warmer water, which in the summer is shallower, and in the winter it's deeper. So I'm anywhere from right on the shore to 20 miles off.
I fish in the area between Little Cranberry, Big Cranberry, Bakers, east of Duck Island, and offshore to about 8 miles or so. And I fish from April through November.
Usually start the spring out in the deeper water, and the lobsters tend to move as the water warms up. And there are lobsters already in the shallow water, but they move more when it warms up. And then opposite in the late summer and into the fall, I fish close to shore in the summer, and then as the season goes on, I fish in deeper water out to the 3-mile line.
What is a stern man? A stern man is a person who works on the back of the boat. Most of the time he baits bags, which means he's putting herring or some other kind of fish in a bait bag that we put in the trap. He also helps the captain tend a trap, handles lobsters, measures lobsters.
Sternman's job is a tough job. They're baiting bait bags, banding lobsters, scrubbing buoys, all kinds of different things. And when there's a lot of lobsters moving, they have to be very fast. And it's a tough job.
He gets a percentage of the catch off the top, and he's pretty much the first mate's with me year-round, and then I have a second stern man when it gets real busy, and keep him until it tapers off again, and then I go back to my one stern man.
How do lobstermen get their buoy colors? Well, they try to pick a color that doesn't interfere with anybody else in their area. And they may have special colors that they like, or they might be meaningful because they maybe belong to somebody that they knew, like an uncle or a grandfather.
Well, we can choose any color we like, but we have to register them with the state. I chose my color, orange and black, back when I was a kid in high school, and nobody else had that color, and it shows up really well. We had day glow paint by then, and it really shows up great. The black actually shows up better in a fog than the orange does.
Surprisingly enough, this color was not around. It's a pretty simple color, yellow with a blue band, but nobody had it in this area, so I got it and I ran with it, and now it's my color.
In my case, a fisherman had died that had my color, and I asked his son if he would be all right if I used that color, and he said yeah. And that's how I got mine, but I have a solid color, and other fishermen have to be imaginative and use different designs.
What are the dangers that a fisherman might encounter at sea? There's many. One thing you've got to watch out for is rope around your feet. That's the worst, I'd say.
I got rope wrapped around my leg when I had set traps, so they were in the water. There was a lot of weight and strain, and the rope coiled around my leg, pulled me into the stern of the boat, and I had to, my stern man came up forward, put the boat out of gear, and I was able to unwrap my leg and get out of it. I did tear my medial meniscus in the process.
You have to keep a wary eye on the weather. You have to watch seas.
You know, the rough weather is the biggest part, but you got to watch out for your crew. And, you know, when they're out back, you know, you don't always have your eye on them. So I'm always looking back, wondering, you know, how they're doing and see what they're bouncing off in the back of the boat.
Running into partially sunken objects like a log that's soaked up, or getting your wheel fouled during bad weather, and being running into in the fog by another boat. Fire on a boat is a big scare.
I had a boat and it was in December, a boat that I loved, but it caught on fire. I tried everything I could to put the fire out, and it wasn't going to go out. But I had to get into a survival suit. My sternman got into his survival suit. We jumped in the water and waited for help. It happened to be a beautiful December day, and the survival suits are great because you don't feel the cold of the water. How the price of a lobster is determined? I would say that it is determined primarily by the buyer, which is unlike any other situation I could think of. And think about when you go into a store, as a buyer, do you set the price? No. But as fishermen, our price is set by buyers. And we hope and we think that most of the time that those prices are somewhat fair relative to the market value of the product. But we have very little say over what the price is. We don't set our own price. It's set by somebody else for us.
It's mainly supply and demand. Also, it's meat content in the shell depends on the quality of the product itself. If it's shippable, you get a lot better price. For something that's not shippable, they go to a processing plant.
You know, when the buyers want them, if the processors need them, they've got to have a certain amount to fill their quotas, so satisfy their customers. So they'll start paying more. I think when it starts going up, it gets bid up even more toward the end of the year, into the winter, and then late winter, early spring, it's at a peak because there's so few lobsters being landed. And but it's really sometimes it's a buyer's market, like it was last year and the year before, and in the midsummer. There were just too many of them to handle. So we kind of had to get rid of them for whatever they'd pay us for.
The buyers have become more bigger and bigger. They've become more corporate structured. They have definitely become made us feel like we're working for Walmart in a way. There used to be a lot of choices as to who we sold to. Now there become much less choices as corporations become bigger, as buyers become bigger. And so, you know, we're not slaves, but we do not determine our own price. And I apologize to the consumer sometimes because what we get is nowhere near what they have to pay.
How am I affected by state and federal regulations? We've had a lot of federal regulations to do with whales that have affected us, cost us a lot. It's made the fishery more dangerous, and it slows us down. We lose a lot of traps because of the rope hanging down. But that's mainly the one regulation that's really affected us the most.
We have a lot of regulations in the lobster fishery, and most of them are good. The federal regulations, which were pushed on us by conservation groups for the sinking ground line that we have to use instead of floating rope, has been a royal pain in the butt for us, and very expensive and dangerous. But most regulations I agree with. I think they're fine.
State and federal regulations affect us different ways. A lot of the state regulations have been approved by the fishermen. We actually asked for a lot of the regulations, a lot of the protections that we have that allow lobsters to be prolific, really. The federal regulations, that's a whole different level. And the federal regulations are coming from people who are well-intentioned, but really have no idea what our fishery is all about. So, you know, it's a constant battle. I work through the Maine Lobstermen's Association as a representative from this island to try to inform the federal government as to what our needs and where we really need to go in the future. But their overview is more oriented towards big business and more oriented towards environmental concerns, which we have. We're not out there to do any damage to the environment. In fact, we're pretty proud of our industry because we feel that we don't do any environmental damage. We work with the federal government the best we can, and it's too bad that there is such a lapse between understanding.
Do I feel that the lobster industry will be viable in the future? I think there's a lot of variables. There's some that we help to control by protecting the females. We V-notch the buried lobsters. We throw back big lobsters because they produce more eggs. But there's a lot of things we can't control. So the water temperature, the acidification of the ocean probably is going to have a major effect at some point.
I think the lobster industry is very viable. There are so many little ones, egg-bearing females, oversized lobsters that unless there's a disease that we really don't know about, we'll be fine.
I think the future looks good for the next 5 or 6 years, and I think it's going to drop or decrease probably within 5 to 8 years. I think it's a cycle that they go in, and it's almost like the Gulf Stream. It just circles around, and eventually, southern Maine, they've already seen the decrease in fishing in their catches, and I think probably in the next 5 to 8 years we're going to see the decrease in lobsters.
When I was a kid, I started with my father back in the 60s, and it was all gloom and doom back then. The lobster industry was in decline, and in the 70s, when I got into high school, Dad insisted that I go to college to get something as a backup, because he really didn't see a lot of future in the lobster industry. And we had a lot of lean years. 70s weren't that great. You know, I got into it in 1976 full time. I did go to college and decided I wanted to come back and go lobstering. But it's had its ups and its downs. We had some good years in the late 90s, early 2000s. Recent years have been incredible. I've never seen the fishing so good, and I don't think my father's ever imagined the fishing could have been this good. But it may be at the expense of everything else. We're seeing the decline of other fisheries. The ground fish are not doing much in this area, at least. Other species have declined. Even the sea urchins have collapsed. Scallops have collapsed in this area, and it may be that the lobsters are just taking over the bottom like locusts. There are just so many of them at certain times of the year. And it's really the only fishery going in the state of Maine now. I don't think that's healthy. So in the long run, I don't know. In the short run, I think we'll have probably some more really good years. A generation from now, I really can't answer the question, but you know, 30, 40 years ago when I was getting started, it didn't look so good, and now it's better than ever.
The resource is not going to be our problem. I think the main concerns are going to be fossil fuels, oil, petroleum-based industry, so that's going to be a major concern. And, you know, pollution in the ocean, climate change, stuff like that are the major concerns. But I really think the resource will be there if those things don't affect it.
I can only tell you that there's a tremendous interest by young people in the fishery. And I know that personally, I've spent most of my fishing life working to make sure that it did continue in future generations. I know that the generation before me worked very hard to make sure that the fishery would continue. When I first started fishing, I went with a person who I consider a mentor, Warren Fernald, and I was appalled the first week I fished with him because we were throwing all these lobsters overboard, all these short lobsters and female lobsters with eggs, and I'm going, what are we doing here? Why aren't we keeping these? And he goes, we throw back for the future. And throwing back for the future is what my generation really bought into. Do I think the lobster fishery will remain viable in the future? It's a unique lifestyle. It's independence, which is not in today's world. There aren't many people that can say that I work for myself and I work outdoors in a good environment, a clean environment, as clean as it can be nowadays. So it's valuable to me, and I hope it's valuable to everyone else.